Can everybody hear me? Yeah. I haven't spoken to 450 people before. You look like a lot of people. I chose this title because journeys and destinations take on new meanings when you're in the motorway service area business. Our job as a motorway service area business is to make people's journeys a bit more inspiring than they might otherwise have been. But destination is a bit of a swear word in our industry. We're an industry regulated by Highways England, and their golden rule is that no motorway service area must become a destination in its own right. So whenever we hear the word destination, or worse still, if anyone ever suggests we might be one, we get very hot under the collar, so we like to stick to journeys instead. Now, Ian asked me if I would come and just talk about the journey of our business from its beginnings in the 1970s to today. And so I'm going to go right back to the beginning. This is my mum and dad in 1967 on their wedding day. They're in the audience, so if you can see anyone that looks like this but 50 years older, then that's them. Dad was and still is a hill farmer, and mum and dad both came from farming families. In 1967, the M6 was being built through Cumbria, connecting what was a remote county to the rest of the country, and it was built through the corner of my mum and dad's farmland at T-Bay in Cumbria. Here we are. As it worked in those days, the Department of Transport determined that there'd be a motorway service area just where it went through my parents' land. It was a decision over which they had no influence, and so that part of their farmland was taken on compulsory purchase. My mum and dad were in their early 30s. They were keen to get on. I think they knew too that hill farmers have always had to diversify if they're to make a sustainable living for themselves. So they looked at this opportunity on their doorstep and they thought they would have a go. In those days, it was the oil companies that bid for motorway service areas, and since there were much more promising opportunities emerging throughout the country, they didn't take much interest, so perhaps it was a one-horse race. I think they'll never know, but they won the bid. And they went into partnership with a local bakery family, the Burkitt family, because they had no experience outside of farming, and they set about building a little motorway service area, T-Bay Services. So this is it, 1972. This was the shop. T-Bay Services northbound opened. It had the shop, a cafe, probably not much bigger, and a few petrol pumps. And over the next 30 years, they grew the business incrementally, as farmers do. They amassed a little capital, and when an opportunity arose, they grew a bit more. And by 2005, they'd built a cluster of businesses in Cumbria. They'd grown T-Bay Services northbound as the motorway service area became more busy, and so did the services too. They built T-Bay Services southbound. They built a hotel, a caravan park, a truck stop, and the Reg Ed Centre, a conference and leisure destination. Now, although the business grew, it didn't depart from its origins, and I think this is probably key to any success it might have had. In our motorway service area, we create our own offer where the rest of the industry franchises theirs in. So we're a completely different business model, requiring a different approach and a different skill set. So instead of Burger King and Waitrose, we have a farm shop selling food created by small producers, and we've got kitchens selling food that we make ourselves. The fact that we both make and buy is really important for our business model. Making is commercially efficient, but it also helps us understand the food process better. So essentially, we're a fresh food business that just happens to be on a motorway. Each of our businesses seeks to be of its place. So we can't roll out our businesses, but we have to understand how each needs to reflect its place in everything from its building to its people to what we sell. So each of our businesses has a sense of independence and uniqueness, and each has a different relationship with its landscape and its community. This is Dave, our butchery manager. So the farm maintains a very close relationship with the business, and our cattle and sheep come into the business every week. So this is Dave inspecting his week's supply of lambs. You can't invent heritage, and that's why I think it's valuable when you've got one. Ours is a farming heritage and a story of farm diversification. Provenance and craftsmanship are a fairly recently revived fashion. And there are lots of food businesses that are now making that claim. But I think when you've been at it for 40 years, it gives you a head start. Some people ask us whether Moto and Road Chef might like to take on the same business model as us. But apart from the fact that I think it's far too much like hard work, it would be difficult for them to do the same because they don't have the heritage. We've got a little video. It's just 2 minutes, but it says everything I've just said, except in my dad's words and a little bit better.
There's a saying that sums up the resourcefulness of a hill farmer in this part of the world. It's a bare hill now Kilganawa without Findon summit. And that means it's a bare hillside he'll cross over on which he won't find something he'll make use of or make a living out of. When the motorway was first mooted, I was still a child. I remember seeing the pegs across the moor as to where the motorway might go. By the time they came to build it, I was 30. They wanted to put a small motorway service area here on our land because the big operators had thought the proposed full motorway service area was not viable here. So we discussed it, and we thought we'd have a go. And so we did. We made the food we offered ourselves and obtained the products locally as far as we could. When you live in an area with many craft products, you want to market those because they're part of the culture of the area. So those core values were part of the business from the word go. The most important thing about our businesses is that they're rooted in their place. So Gloucester is a completely new challenge in a different area, but it's an extension of the same idea. It's been enormous fun, tremendous fun. It's been great. And some great people, really great people. We've been very, very lucky.
It's a nice video, isn't it? I'm sure I would be terrible at running a business whose product I wasn't excited about. I think business is first and foremost a creative exercise, as much an art as it is a science. We try and give our makers and buyers in the business the freedom to create an offer which feels right rather than the one that's generated by the numbers. So the numbers follow in our business, but they're no less important for that. So when our monthly numbers come out on the Friday night after the month end, even if we have a glass of wine in our hand, we're very quick to have a look at them and see if our ideas are working and if our customers are liking what we're doing. 2005, this isn't 2005, so 10 years ago, the Burkitt family, mum and dad's partners, decided to retire and sell out. And so that was a crossroads for us. I'd recently joined the business, and together as a family, we decided to buy back their shares. And it seemed like a sensible time for my dad to take a step back, just a little one because it's a family business, and me to take a step forward. In our family, I look after the business, and my sister Jane looks after our interests outside of the business, so the farm and the other things too. I think family businesses are a balancing act between the strengths that they can bring, but also the limitations that they also invariably come with too. At best, I think family businesses can bring a human face and a consistency and a longevity, which when it works well can be the envy of many a PLC. I know Terence Conran, when he was criticised on his constant interventions into design decisions, he said, "My decisions may not be right, but at least they're consistent." And so with that approach, he created a great brand. But I think family businesses too need meritocracy and objectivity, like every good business. And I think especially as you grow, as we have done, it's very important to have a skilled and strong team within the business who can work with and stand up to the family. I think in the best family businesses, the family is there to support the business, not the other way round, and that enterprise has to be at the heart of all conversations. So back to 2005, when I took the reins in the business, we decided as a team that we wanted to grow. We started looking for motorway service area opportunities, and we embarked, I guess, on the challenge of retaining the DNA in the business, which we knew was quite powerful, but redefining it for a new generation. We looked for a few opportunities, but the one at Gloucestershire on the M5 ticked our boxes, I think, from the start. It's a very busy motorway. It has twice as many cars as the motorway at T-Bay. It's a really strong farming and food producer community, and that was essential for the type of business we are. And finally, we had an opportunity there to create a business that was able to support its local communities in a unique way, which I'll say a bit more about later. Now, nothing worthwhile is easy, and this was no exception. It took 7 years to get it up and running to opening point. We were granted planning permission first time by our local planning authority. I think the first time a motorway service area has ever done that. But we were next door to Welcome Break, and they took us to judicial review and then to appeal after that. So it was a very controversial planning project that lost us a lot of time and money in the meantime. I will say it was funny, sort of, the communities and how supportive they were down there. There were quite a lot of people, mainly the politicians, that sat on the fence at the beginning. There were a few people that really didn't want to see us there, the competitors and those concerned about the environment. But the farmers and the food community put their neck on the line for us right from the beginning. So CLA and NFU, they were absolutely fantastic in supporting us at the beginning there. Raising funds, once we got planning permission, wasn't easy either. We had to raise £45 million to build the project, and it was bang in the middle of a recession, and it was a big ask for the size of the business that we were. I just wanted to say something about our industry, not because I think you're interested in the motorway service area industry, but rather I think sometimes the way we see our industry is key to finding our opportunity within it. When I first joined the business, I wasn't sure whether it was a good thing or a bad thing to be a motorway service area business. It's a business regulated by Highways England. You need their approval for planning permission. They tell you how to design it. You have to design to a set criteria. You have to be open 24/7, and you can only sell things that are relevant to the customer's journey. It's really difficult to grow in our industry. The only opportunities left are the difficult ones. That's why they're left. And they're very expensive to build. And the existing motorway service areas are all sewn up by large corporates owned by private equity houses and banks, and they don't want to sell. And to boot, everybody hates motorway service areas. So I've long since found that saying that you run a motorway service area is a bit of a conversation stopper. But usually the opportunity is commensurate with the challenge. And because the barriers to entry are very high in our industry, once you're in it, motorway service area businesses are scale businesses. So even the little ones are big. At T-Bay, we have 4 million customers a year. At Gloucestershire, we have 5. I think that means as well that because we're a food business, food loves scale. So it's much easier to run a good food business when you've got footfall. I think understanding the opportunity of an industry means not being constrained by it either. It never ceases to amaze me how many people are surprised that we're doing something different in the industry when really they should be surprised that everybody else is doing the same. Those people probably wouldn't be doing the same if they weren't so busy watching each other. I've got a lion in a cage there because there's a little story of a lion in a cage the lion lives in the cage for many, many years and he walks around the edge, and one day his owner lifts the cage and he carries on walking round in the same circle. I don't know if you heard Michael Caine on the radio last week or the week before, but I quite enjoyed hearing his story. And he said, you're only ever in competition with yourself. And I thought that was really nice. And I think sometimes to feel that you're in competition with your competitors can be very limiting. So Gloucester Services, the outside of Gloucester Services was hugely landscape sensitive because it's flanked by area of outstanding natural beauty. And our response to that was crucial in terms of getting planning permission. But as often happens, constraints can propel creativity, and I think we probably came up with a more interesting design as a result. So our aim was to create a site which was hidden from the outside, and we created a topography that sunk the car parks and covered our buildings and our petrol filling station with grass. So whilst it needed to be hidden on the outside, we wanted it to be beautiful on the inside. There's a planning irony that planning is driven by the 400 people that go to the top of those hills every year rather than the 5 million people that come into the buildings every year. So we were intent that that didn't stop us from making a beautiful building on the inside as well. And we wanted to capture the DNA, I suppose, that we had of T-Bay, but somehow re-express it in a way that was suitable for a contemporary building. So any of you who might know our motorway service areas, T-Bay is quite agricultural and quite rustic, and Gloucester is a much more contemporary, sleek version, but hopefully there's a thread of DNA that runs between them. Producers. Our producers are very, very important to us. In Cumbria, we spent 3 decades building relationships with our local producers, and we're really proud to work with 70 local producers up there. When we went down to Gloucestershire, I think the food producers emerged in new proportions, and they came out of their rabbit holes, and we've ended up working with 130 local producers within 30 miles of the site and a further 70 from the southwest. I think how we work with local producers is key to us in the business. It's the hardest to reach producers that we are always after because they're the ones that make our offer most unique. And that necessitates a different kind of relationship with them because we have to be prepared to go the extra mile to get them. This is Neil and Deborah Flint. They make sausage rolls. We didn't meet them in our Meet the Buyer events because they didn't come to them because they didn't think that they were big enough to be able to work with our business. But we happened to stumble across them in the Forest of Dean at some point, and we tasted one of their sausage rolls. And we said that we had to find a way of bringing them into the business because they're very, very good. Neil and Deborah gave up their office jobs about 3 years ago, bought a small holding in the Forest of Dean, some pigs, and they set up a sausage roll business. When we started working with them to work out how they were going to supply us, our initial projections were that we would sell about £20,000 worth of sausage rolls in the first year. We actually sold £100,000 worth of sausage rolls in the first year, and this year we're going to sell over £200,000 worth of their sausage rolls. So as a result, they've moved to new premises, they've got a team of staff, They've been featured in almost every national newspaper, I think, since they've started working with us. And they have shone a light on our business as much as hopefully we have on theirs as well. And Prince Charles came to open our Gloucester southbound services in July last year. And we invited Neil and Deborah to come and meet him. And Deborah sent me an email the night before that just said, "I can't believe this is happening. A year ago, I didn't even have money for a haircut." So it's one of the nice elements of our business that you end up working with and helping each other along the way. Just wanted to say a bit about our community approach. Being for our place as well as of our place is a part of what we do. In Cumbria, because the business grew out of its community, it's been lucky to have strong relationships with its communities, which it's developed over the years. But in Gloucestershire, it wasn't clear how we would do that, or in a new site anyway. But it was interesting that the opportunity in Gloucestershire came about from a telephone call from a chap called Mark Gale, who works in social regeneration in Gloucestershire. And he wanted to be a part of the business that he invited us to discuss. And what we did was we formed a partnership with him, which entailed a charity arm and then us as a business. And 2% of our non-fuel turnover goes into his charity every year, which he then invests into the local communities, which are our local employment communities. So that's about £500,000 a year. So a really, it's interesting how you can form new ways of, and very relevant ways of embedding yourselves in communities in projects like this. And this is just a picture of a veg patch that we're growing together on our site. It's quite a struggle because it's north-facing and it's clay. But it's basically for people in the community who aren't ready to get a proper job. They may be suffering from addiction or mental illness or other problems, and this is a way of getting them into a work environment. So over the last 2 years, we've grown. We've grown from 450 people to 1,000 people, 5 million customers to 10 million customers, turnover of 40 million to 80 million, and probably most important for us, from a Cumbrian business to a business that spreads over 300 miles. And it's been a very, very interesting process. Painful at times, but also refreshing too. But I think most of all, it's necessitated a different way of working. I did speak to somebody the other day when I was talking about growing pains, and they rightly pointed out that being in a growing business is not as painful as being in a declining business. So you have to be careful what you wish for. But where next on the journey? Well, we're not sure. We don't know. I think in some ways this is a crossroads that we need to stop and settle what is a big business. But I'm sure some opportunities will turn up at some stage going forward too. So thank you very much for listening. And I don't know if we have questions. Yeah.